The girl was delivering groceries when she overheard a worker throwing something downstairs. Seeing that someone was about to get hurt, she immediately jumped forward and knocked the man downstairs out of the way. Fortunately, with the protection of a helmet, the girl was not hurt by the falling bricks, but the man was stunned when he saw her, because the girl in front of him looked exactly like her sister. After recovering, the man said he was fine. He was worried that the girl had hurt her head and wanted to take her to the hospital for a checkup. The girl said she wore a helmet and was fine. The man had to leave his contact information and asked the girl to call him if she had any problems. At this moment, the girl would never have dreamed that her act of kindness would change her life forever. Afterwards, the man called his sister and told her about it, but Jean didn't believe her. She even joked that she didn't have any mysteries about her life. After hanging up the phone, Jean went to the airport to meet her fiancé, Ji-ho, who had returned from his studies. Because Ji-ho is the heir to the future group, he's the center of attention wherever he goes. Jean smiled and offered flowers to Ji-ho. Ji-ho also smiled and accepted the flowers to thank him, but as soon as he was out of the media's sight, Ji-ho immediately showed a look of disgust. Then he walked away, leaving Jean standing in the same place. On the way back, Jean was upset. Then Ji-ho suddenly gave her an expensive diamond necklace. Jean was so happy to receive such an expensive gift. After putting on the necklace, Jean asked Ji-ho how it worked, but Ji-ho just closed her eyes and ignored what Jean said. Jean was so angry that she didn't know what to do. Then they went to a restaurant for dinner. Since they're in a political marriage, they're strangers to each other. After the meal, Jean suggested that they take some time to get to know each other, but Ji-ho said there was no need to waste time. He gave Jean's mom a list of personal information to memorize. Furious, Jean wanted to get up and leave, but then a noblewoman passed by. When Ji-ho saw it, he immediately got up and greeted her. The woman in front of him was the chairman of LG Jewelry Group, Mr. Kim. Ji-ho has been trying to get LG Jewelry to move into his store, but Mr. Kim refused because he's already working with someone else. As she was about to leave, she was attracted by the necklace around Jean's neck. Seeing that her plan was working, Ji-ho immediately went up to her and explained that it was a necklace that would bring her good luck. He used this necklace to propose to his fiancée. Chairman Kim was overwhelmed with emotion, because this was her late husband's first design. He also used this necklace to propose to her. She was overwhelmed with emotion at the sight, so she changed her mind and re-established cooperation with Ji-ho. It was then that Jean realized that she was just being used as a tool for business. She was very upset and complained to Ji-ho, but Ji-ho said that their marriage was a deal. He left without looking back. At home, Jean complained to her mom, but instead of comforting her, she slapped her in the face. She told her to bear it no matter how hard she felt. Now the company's financial chain is broken. If they don't get support from Future Group, they'll go bankrupt anytime. So what she should do is not to complain but to try her best to please Ji-ho. The more Jean heard about it, the more frustrated she became. In order not to ruin her future, she simply left a note before the engagement ceremony and ran away from home. Because Jean didn't show up, rumors spread that the two families were breaking off their engagement. Ji-ho's mom put pressure on Jean's mom in order to quell the rumors. If she doesn't find Jean in 3 days, she'll have to cancel the wedding. While the whole family was in a state of anxiety, Yeman thought of the delivery girl who saved him at the construction site. At that moment, Nayi was also in trouble. She used to live with her grandmother in poverty. In order to have a better life, Nayi worked several jobs every day. After years of saving, she invested her money and got cheated. Her grandmother fell ill and was hospitalized, needing an expensive operation. Just when Nayi was at the end of her rope, Yeman found her. Knowing Nayi's situation, Yeman offered to help her pay for her grandmother's surgery. The only thing he asked was that Nayi pretend to be his sister and meet Ji-ho's family. At this point, Nayi had no choice but to agree. She was shocked to see the luxurious room of 12 square meters, and Mrs. Min was shocked to see Nayi. She didn't realize that there was really someone in the world who looked exactly like her daughter. The only difference is that Nayi's clothes are too rustic. In order to make Nayi look more like a rich girl, Yeman took her for a full-body makeover. That's how Nayi changed from a trashy girl to a rich white girl. In order to prevent Nayi from revealing her flaws in the meeting, Yeman also trained her in table manners, familiarizing her with all kinds of tableware used by rich people. Then he made Nayi familiarize herself with the names of Ji-ho's family. Once everything was ready, Nayi went to the meeting ceremony led by Jean's family. Nayi was so nervous that she peed herself. She went to empty her memory. After inhaling fresh air in the toilet, Nayi's nervousness was finally relieved. Unexpectedly, she met the woman who cheated her out of all her hard-earned money. She's not a fool, so she ran away immediately. Nayi didn't care about anything else and rushed after her. After a long chase, she finally caught her. But before Nayi could get her money back, a man's voice suddenly caught her attention. Nayi turned around and realized that the person in front of her was Ji-yu, the big star she had loved for a long time. If Ji-yu is here, that means the man beside him is Jean's fiancé. In order to keep her identity from being exposed, she had to let the con artist go. Ji-ho walked up to Nayi. When Nayi realized it, she immediately acted like a young lady. At this point, Jiho doesn't realize that Nai is an imposter. He taunts Nai if she's changed her mind because of the money. Nai didn't want him to find out, so she apologized. Just as they were about to enter the private room, Jiho stopped and warned Nai that she's not capable of running away from the wedding once. If you don't have the confidence to take the position of the future Mrs. Group, then give it up. Anyway, there are many women who want to be in that position, although Nai is just a stand-in. When she heard Jiho being so arrogant, she was so angry that she wanted to kick her. But when she thought of her grandma lying on the hospital bed, Nai forced a smile on her face and endured. But then an accident happened. The two of them got mixed up together. This sudden closeness scared both of them. Jiho immediately asked Nai why she was sneaking up on him. Nai also asked him why he didn't avoid it and if he was trying to take advantage of him. Nai left the scene in a panic because of the awkwardness. Later, during the meal, her cell phone suddenly rang. Ji-yu was so happy to hear it because it was their band song. Nai said she was a fan of the band. When Ji-yu heard that, he immediately invited her to the concert. Nai's eyes light up when she succeeds in chasing after her star. Mrs. Min and Yeman were nervous when they saw her like this, so Nai quickly explained that they're going to be a family. So he wanted to know more about Jiho's family. Jiho's father was even more pleased with Nai. He said that he wanted the wedding to happen as soon as possible. That's how Nai made it through the meeting of the two families without a hitch. When the meal was over, Jiho told the elders that he wanted to spend more time with Nai, but as soon as the family left, Jiho changed his mind. He said that the reason he did it was just to make a gesture in front of the elders. Then he left without Nai. Jiho's arrogant attitude made Nai's teeth hurt. While Nai was yelling at Jiho's back, Chairman Kim, who had met Ee-jin before, greeted Nai. Nai was completely confused by Chairman Kim's greeting. Fortunately, Yeman appeared in time to solve the crisis. After returning home, in order to prevent Nai from revealing her identity to other people, Yeman gave Nai all the information about her sister's habits and friends so she could memorize it all. Then Nai was invited to Jiho's house. The moment she walked into the yard, she was immediately shocked. Then Mrs. Park gave Nai Jiho's information. She wanted to help her understand her son quickly. She also gave Nai the family schedule and told her to cooperate with Jiho. After explaining everything, Mrs. Park asked her to wait for dinner in Jiho's room. Nai couldn't help but marvel at the array of luxury items in the room. After seeing Jiho's sword equipment, she put on her helmet and played with it. But just when Nai was having fun, Jiho suddenly appeared in front of her. Seeing Nai's lack of image, Jiho criticized her for pretending to be a lady in front of outsiders. But in private, she was always acting weird. Nai was so embarrassed. Jiho turned around to change her clothes. Nai was very shy and was about to leave, but Jiho suddenly touched her. Nai was so scared that she pushed Jiho away. Then she raised her fist and warned Jiho, if he tries anything, she'll break his ham sausage. At that moment, Nai suddenly realized that she's a rich girl, so she switched back to being a lady. She gently told Jiho that even though they're engaged, but they need to refrain before they get married. Without waiting for Jiho's reaction, Nai rushed away. When they got home, Yeman told Nai to go to Jiho's grandpa's memorial service. He said that Jiho was the founder of the future group. Many employees of the group would be there that day. Nai was devastated when she heard that. She thought she was just going to the meeting ceremony as Ee-jin's replacement. But now there are so many events to attend. It's way beyond the scope of their agreement. Yeman said that he could pay more. When Nai heard that, her eyes lit up. She said she's the best at paying homage, because her family had a lot of deaths. Not to mention Jiho's grandfather's memorial service. Even if Jiho's whole family died, she'd help them all die. Soon it was Jiho's grandpa's memorial day. While Nai was greeting Jiho's elders, but an old woman suddenly pointed at Nai and yelled at her. She said she wasn't Jiho's wife at all. Nai was so shocked that she didn't know what to do. Luckily, the old woman was not in her right mind, so no one cared what she said. In order to show off in front of Jiho's family, Nai helped with the housework. When Jiho saw her, he mocked her for always pretending. Does she have a secret to hide? When Nai heard that, she was very upset. Nai was furious and said that everything Jiho said was disgusting. Jiho was speechless in no time. Then Nai came to help in the kitchen, because she grew up in a poor life. That's why Nai is good at all the housework. She didn't look like a young lady at all. The maids all praised Nai. Jiho, who was passing by, heard it and was attracted to Nai. Then Mrs. Park took Nai to greet her grandmother, but she asked Nai to carry her on her back. The housekeeper rushed to help Nai, but she was kicked in the back by the grandmother. The kind-hearted Nai didn't want to make things difficult for everyone, so she took the initiative to carry her on her back. Unexpectedly, the old lady peed on her. Everyone was shocked by this embarrassing scene, but Nai didn't care at all. Nai continued to carry the old woman into her room to change her clothes. Jiho saw the scene. Now he's having a heart attack. After changing, Nai snuggled up next to her. It reminded her of her own grandmother. She's been out for so many days now, but she doesn't know how she's doing. On the other side of the room, her grandmother was eating dinner alone and she was also thinking about Nai. After the evening service, Nai helped clear the table, but when she picked up her grandfather's tablet, the light suddenly went out. Nae lit a match to light the fire, but she was surprised by Jiho's sudden appearance. When the light came back on, Nae was already on top of Jiho. The atmosphere became very ambiguous, but Jiho's childhood friend saw the scene. Yuri was so angry that she immediately turned around and left. Jiho was furious and asked Nae if she fell on him on purpose. Nae said she was the victim. Then Yuri approached Jiho. He asked him if he was really going to marry Ejin. Jiho replied that it's something his family has already decided. Yuri continued to ask him if he was going to get married even if he wasn't in love. But Jiho said he doesn't believe in love anymore. It doesn't matter who he marries. He told Yuri to stay out of his business. Seeing that he's about to lose his spouse's rights, Yuri confessed to Jiho in tears. If it doesn't matter who it is, why don't you choose yourself? He's been in love with Jiho since he was a child. However, Jiho told her to give up on her. Yuri hugged Jiho from behind. But Nae, who was not far away, heard all this. When she saw Jiho discovering her, Nae ran away. She realized that Ejin and Yuri had been friends for years, and Yuri had always been in love with Jiho. But it was Ejin who married Jiho in the end. That's why Yuri was so hostile whenever she saw her. Nae was confused by this complicated triangle, but it's good that she's just an imposter. When Ejin comes back, she'll be free. Suddenly, the sound of a cat drew Nae to a side hall. What she doesn't know is that an older sister is staring at her strangely. Jiho doesn't have a lot of feelings for Nae, but he feels bad for Nae to see him hugging Yuri, so he planned to talk to Nae. Jiho found Nae and realized she was rescuing a kitten. Unfortunately, the mom was dead. Unable to bear it, Nae took Jiho to a clearing where she was going to bury the mother. When he found out that Nae wanted him to dig, Jiho almost died. He had never done this kind of work before. Nae immediately asked him if he was a man. When Jiho heard that, he immediately agreed to her request, but he couldn't get the shovel to work. Nae looked disdainful and took the shovel and started to criticize Jiho. He said that his hands were good for nothing but eating. After burying the cat's mom in the ground, Jiho took Nae home. He wanted to explain to Nae about himself and Yuri, but Nae was distracted by the peeing kitten. Jiho was furious, because no one had ever dared to ignore what he said. He immediately threw Nae off the bus. The next day, Nae came to the office well-dressed and prepared for a press interview with Jiho, but just then, an employee who had been fired by Jiho blocked their way. Before anyone realized what was going on, the woman threw a tomato at Jiho. Nae pushed Jiho away, and she was hit by the tomato. However, when he saw Nae's messy body, Jiho didn't greet her with concern, but was worried that the interview wouldn't go on properly. He told Nae to clean up the mess. Yuri then took Nae to the restroom to clean up the stains. Looking at Nae after removing her makeup, Yuri felt a little strange. She felt that Nae's face was different from before. Nae quickly explained that her face had been reshaped a little bit. Yuri didn't suspect too much after hearing that. At that moment, the mall staff brought Nae some change of clothes. What Nae didn't realize was that the employee was her childhood friend Jisoo. Nae immediately turned her head away, but Jisoo recognized Nae right away. She was so excited that she pestered Nae with questions. When Yuri saw her employee being so rude, she immediately scolded her for not wanting to work. How can she not recognize the CEO's fiancé? Jisoo was baffled when she heard this. She didn't understand how her childhood friend suddenly became the CEO's fiancé. She apologized and left with a puzzled look on her face. Nae was glad that her fiancé's appearance didn't reveal her identity, but at the end of the interview, the director asked her to do a piano performance as a promotional material, because Ejin majored in piano in college. Nae panicked when she heard that. What should she do? And her nervousness was seen by Jisoo on stage. Nae asked Yuri for a glass of water to stall for time. When Jisoo heard that, he immediately volunteered to get a glass of water. While Nae was sitting in front of the piano with trembling legs and didn't know what to do, Jisoo came on stage with a glass of water. She stumbled and poured water on the piano on purpose, so Nae was able to escape from the situation. Nae and Jisoo looked at each other and immediately smiled. Then Nae went to the warehouse to look for Jisoo. Both of them are very excited because they haven't seen each other for a long time. Nae asked Jisoo how he recognized him. Jisoo said she didn't recognize him at first, but when he saw her hands shaking because she had to play the piano, he knew. Jisoo wondered how Nae suddenly became the CEO's fiancé. Nae had to tell her that she was replacing the daughter of a plutocrat, and asked her to keep it a secret. Jisoo had no problem with that. When she was leaving the mall, Nae saw the woman who just threw a tomato at Jiho. When she asked, she realized that she had been working hard at the mall for 3 years. She's fatherless and has 2 younger siblings to take care of. She's tired and depressed, so she smokes to relieve her stress. But Jiho fired her just because she smoked once. When Nae heard that, she felt sorry for her, so she took out her own money to help the woman. But Jiho saw her doing it. Nae asked Jiho not to hurt the woman, but Jiho said that the company is not a charity and told Nae not to do anything. Nae was very angry at him. She accused him of being an impersonal money machine. She said it's no use if he's covered in designer labels. At least his character should be a brand name. Nae left without looking back, leaving Jiho in a daze, and Nae regretted her mouth so much. When she got home, Nai realized that Yeman's hand was injured. She hurriedly prepared dinner for Yeman. Seeing Nai being so sweet, Yeman felt the love from his sister for the first time. The next day, Nai didn't have anything to do, so she walked around the street. She saw a cake eating contest on the sidewalk. Nai was instantly interested and signed up without even thinking about it. As the host gave the order, all the contestants gobbled up the cake. Seeing others trying to surpass her, Nai simply grabbed the cake with her hands and stuffed it into her mouth. This action shocked the others on the spot, so Nai won the first place as she wanted to. While she was cheering for her victory, she suddenly spotted Jiho's mom in the crowd, so that Mrs. Park wouldn't recognize her. Nai smeared the remaining cake on her face. Mrs. Park tried to see if it was Nai but was distracted by Jiho's sudden appearance. As they were leaving, Jiho also spotted Nai. Nai was glad she wasn't recognized. She was about to go home when Jiho stopped her. Jiho asked her if she had a problem with her brain. As the CEO's fiancée, how could she go to such a low-class event, knowing that she was in the wrong? Nai explained that all women feel uneasy before getting married. That's why she wanted to try something she'd never done before. Jiho wanted to say something, but Yuri came to call him for a meeting. On the way back to the office, Jiho asked Yuri if all women are strange before marriage. One day she's going to a cake-eating contest. The next she's keeping a stray cat. Yuri was very surprised. She remembered that Yeman didn't like sweets at all and Eugene was allergic to animal hair. A woman's intuition made her suspicious about the identity of the current Eugene. In order to verify her suspicions, she found Jisoo. She asked what happened when she greeted Eugene. Is it because someone looks like the CEO's fiancé? Jisoo quickly explained that she had face blindness and that's why she recognized the wrong person. Although Jisoo denied it, Yuri thought there was something wrong. On the other hand, Mrs. Min went home and was furious. She blamed Nai for ruining her daughter's reputation. It turns out that the video of Nai eating a cake had already made it to the top of the charts. Jiho's mom saw it and scolded Eugene mom. Mrs. Min also felt that Nai was tarnishing her daughter's image. She rushed to Nai's room in anger. She told Nai to get rid of her old clothes and the kitten she took in. Nai cried in fear. Yeman told his mom to be patient. He said he would find his runaway sister as soon as possible. But mom asked him why he couldn't find her after all this time. Because it's not her sister, so she's not doing anything about it. Yeman was very upset. Although Eugene is his half-sister, he's more worried than anyone else. Nai didn't want Yeman to feel bad and put the cat in Jisoo's house. That's when she accidentally found out from Jisoo. Jiho recommended a job to the woman who threw the tomatoes and helped her rent an apartment. Nai immediately felt for Jiho. When Yeman came home, he saw Nai looking sad, so he offered to take her to Jiho's concert to help Nai feel better. Jiho's mom felt that Nai's behavior was affecting the company's image. She planned to send a bodyguard to watch Nai's every move around the clock, but Jiho was against it. He didn't think it was necessary to make such a big fuss over such a small matter. He'll take care of it himself and tell mom to stay out of it. Then he called Yuri. He asked her why she posted the video of Nai eating cake on the internet. Yuri said she just wanted to get her own place. Jiho was very upset with her. Jiho told her that if she continues to do this, she should change her company. On the other hand, Nai and Yeman arrived outside the concert venue. Yeman knew that Nai had a sweet tooth, so he bought Nai a lot of delicious food. Nai was so happy about it. This was the first time she went shopping and the first time she called Yeman her brother. It was also the first time she pampered her brother like a sister. Because Yeman is gentle and sweet, Nai feels better when she's with him. And Jiho saw their sweet scene. This made Jiho feel very jealous. He went up to Nai and scolded her over the cake. Nai didn't dare to talk back because she was in the wrong. Yeman saw this and helped Nai. Jiho heard it and stopped talking. Then they arrived at Jiu's concert. As soon as Jiu showed up, the fans were in an uproar. Nai was accidentally knocked to the ground. When they heard her scream, Yeman and Jiho rushed over in unison. Nai thought it was Yeman, but when she looked up, she realized it was Jiho and was shocked. Realizing that they were still holding hands, Nai shook off Jiho. Jiho questioned her if she was trying to provoke him, and then he came closer to her. Nai suddenly shook Jiho and threw him away. Jiho was furious at her rude behavior. Luckily, Yeman showed up and ended the drama. Afterwards, they watched the concert in earnest. Nai, who was a fan of Jiu, was very supportive. After the concert, Jiu introduced his brother and sister-in-law who came to his concert for the first time. Fans immediately asked them to kiss each other. Nai didn't know what to do in such an awkward situation. Jiho didn't want to lose face in front of the crowd, so he immediately put on his big lips and stirred wildly with Nai. The concert ended with their impromptu performance. The next day, Nai was called home by Mrs. Park again, because of the cake-eating incident. Nai felt very sorry. She tried to please her mother-in-law with her excellent cooking skills, and Chairman Park not only didn't mind the cake-eating incident, but praised Nai for her good looks. Seeing that Chairman Park is so easygoing, Nai played a game with him. After a fierce battle, their faces looked like cats. Their family members were also attracted by their laughter. At this time, Chairman Park lost again. Nai took a pen and was about to draw on his face. Mrs. Park saw this and immediately stopped her, but Chairman Park didn't care at all. After Nai finished drawing, He even took a happy photo with her. Later, during a chat with her aunt, the aunt told Nae that in fact, when Jiho was a child, he was very lively and cheerful, but when he was 8 years old, he was kidnapped by his tutor, someone he trusted and liked very much. After being rescued, he was left with serious psychological trauma. Since then, Jiho's personality has changed drastically. He no longer trusts anyone around him. After hearing this, Nae also felt great sympathy for Jiho. Yuri saw the video of Jiho and Nae mixing together like crazy and suddenly became enraged. She fell ill. After learning about this, Nae specially made her a bowl of porridge. However, Yuri threw it in the trash can on the spot. Ji-yu, who witnessed this, had to ask Nae to leave first. Later, during a chat with Jisoo, Nae learned that the video of her eating the cake was deliberately spread by Yuri, with the aim of ruining the marriage between Ijin and Jiho. Nae panicked at the news. If that really happened, wouldn't she have to return all the money Ijin's family had given her? In order to prevent this terrible thing from happening, Nae resolutely held on to her position. However, what she didn't know was that Ijin had never actually run away from home, and she had been monitoring Nae's every move, and it was all a conspiracy planned by Ijin and her mother. Their goal was to deliberately let Nae marry Jiho instead of Ijin. It turns out that the Park family has been passed down a terrifying curse for 100 years. Every first bride who marries their eldest son will die mysteriously on her wedding night. This has been the case without exception for 100 years, and ever since Ijin and Jiho got engaged, she has been having the same recurring nightmare. In the dream, an older sister said she would take her life on her wedding night. For this reason, Mrs. Min approached the Park family's official shaman and bought the secret at a high price. Mrs. Min couldn't bear to part with the huge wealth of the future group, but was afraid that Ijin would lose his life because of this. Just as they were torn between the two, Nae appeared, so they asked Nae to be Ijin's scapegoat, and even Yeeman was completely unaware of this. At this time, Nae was still playing the role of a wealthy young lady diligently to attend Ijin's best friend's party. Yuri wanted to humiliate Nae. She maliciously asked Nae to call Jiho out, and said she wanted the sisters to meet Nae's Chable fiancé in advance. The reason she did this was because she was sure Jiho would definitely not come. Sure enough, as soon as Nae connected the call, she was rejected. Yuri secretly rejoiced at this turn of events. She thought it was all over. But then Jiho suddenly appeared during the scene change. She invited everyone to go out for top-notch cuisine. During the meal, Jiho and Nae kept showing off their affection for each other. The jealous Yuri implied that Nae had taken her man. Nae was so disgusted that she almost vomited the milk she had drunk as a child. She accidentally knocked her phone to the ground. As soon as Nae bent down, she noticed Yuri provoking her. This scene infuriated Nae. After the meal was over, everyone got up and left, but Yuri sat in her seat, not getting up, because she had noticed that she had lost her shoes. As she wondered what was going on, at that moment, Nae threw the shoes in front of her. Yuri was instantly embarrassed and humiliated. After returning home, because of Yuri's constant bad behavior, Nae had not even finished eating the dinner she just had, so she and Isian went to the supermarket to buy a late-night snack. Just as they were checking out, Yeeman suddenly saw a familiar figure. Yeeman thought she was mistaken, but then the shop assistant came running out and told Nae that she had forgotten something. Nae said she had mistaken someone else, but the shop assistant said that they looked exactly the same. Yeeman immediately realized that the person was Ijin. He hurriedly chased after him. Nae saw this and followed closely behind. Just then, Nae saw Ijin across the road and planned to find out what was going on, but a car suddenly sped towards her. Luckily, Yeeman pulled Nae back in time. When she came to her senses, Ijin had already disappeared. After learning that Ijin had almost been discovered by Yeeman, Mrs. Min immediately told her not to continue to appear everywhere. The next day, Nae learned from her childhood friend that Jiho and Yuri had stayed in a hotel for a night, in order to find out what they planned to do. After they left the hotel, Nae followed Jiho all the way, until she followed Jiho to a luxurious villa, and saw Jiho lighting a fire, and immediately thought that he was warming up the house for Yuri in advance. And then she immediately started to imagine the two of them doing things. In order to catch them in the act, Nae crouched by the window, keeping an eye on every move in the house. But when her hands froze, Yuri still didn't appear. Jiho suddenly appeared when Nae didn't know what to do. Nae was suddenly shocked. After learning that Nae was going to catch her in the act, Jiho explained that he had nothing to do with Yuri, and that even if he did, he would not be stupid enough to be discovered by a fool like Nae. Nae knew that if she stayed any longer, she would only embarrass herself, so she got up and left. Unexpectedly, she was pulled down onto the bed by Jiho. Then Jiho fell on top of Nae, with a wicked smile on his face, and said he wanted to have a 2-minute love affair with Nae. Nae hurriedly grabbed Jiho's right hand and bit down as soon as she heard this. Jiho immediately screamed in pain. Nae got up and angrily scolded Jiho for humiliating her like this. Jiho, however, explained that he clearly didn't like her, but was pestering her every day in order to take the position of the future hostess of the cha group. Nai was speechless after hearing this. Then she wanted to drive away, but suddenly a woman appeared on the road. Nai was frightened again, so scared that she had to go back to the villa. To ease the awkwardness, Nai made Jiho a dinner. Although Jiho said she didn't like it, she was actually very touched. After dinner, Nai asked Jiho to help with the dishes. Jiho was extremely reluctant to do so he deliberately spilled the soup on Nai. This made Nai so angry that she had to go to the bathroom to take off her clothes and wash them. Unexpectedly, when she got up to get something, she accidentally stepped on the soap and fell. Hearing the scream, Jiho hurriedly broke in. Seeing Nai lying on the floor with a bath towel, Jiho was worried that Nai would show her body when he took her to the hospital, so he hurriedly brought clothes to change for Nai, but Nai asked him to turn off the lights and close his eyes. Jiho had no choice but to do as she asked. After treatment by the doctor, Nai finally recovered. This is when Nai suddenly felt the urge to urinate and struggled to get up on her own. Jiho couldn't bear to see her like this, so he gave her a princess carry and carried her to the wheelchair. This intimate contact instantly made Nai's heart race. The next day, Nai woke up and found Jiho had been by her side all night, and she instantly felt a surge of affection for Jiho. After returning home, Nai thought back to the beautiful moments she had shared with Jiho, and couldn't help but smile foolishly. But as soon as she came to her senses, she reminded herself that she was just a body double. On the other side, Yuri thought back to what Jisoo had said, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt that she was hiding some kind of secret. So she decided to go to Jisoo's house to find out what was going on. At this time, Nai was at Jisoo's house drinking and chatting. She thought about how Jiho had previously complained that she had the body of a primary school student. Nai asked Jisoo if all men like sexy women. Jisoo suggested that she give herself a sexy makeover. Nai did as she was told and immediately put on sexy stockings. Just as the two sisters were having fun, two burly men suddenly appeared looking for Jisoo to collect a debt. When they heard that Jisoo was unable to pay, the men immediately became aggressive towards Jisoo. Nai of course would not stand by and do nothing. She immediately grabbed a frying pan and started attacking the men. The men saw this and had no choice but to flee. But before the sisters could celebrate, Yuri appeared. Nai was immediately terrified, afraid that her identity would be revealed. She quickly ran away. Fortunately, because of the drastic changes, Yuri did not recognize Nai. Then Yuri continued to ask Jisoo about Ijin, but Jisoo denied everything. Yuri had to give up after hearing this. On the other side, Nai hurriedly ran home and almost got hit by a car. She was so angry that she immediately yelled at the driver. When the driver got out of the car, Nai realized it was Jiho. In a hurry, Nai climbed straight into a tree. Suddenly, she got nervous and stepped on Jiho's foot. Seeing this, Jiho immediately ran to the bottom to greet him. However, he was suddenly pressed heavily on by Nai. Jiho held up his scratched hand and complained to Nai, but Nai was only concerned about the roasted sweet potatoes that had fallen to the ground. Jiho was speechless at her behavior. Jiho then questioned Nai why she was dressed like that. Nai quickly explained that she was playing a game with her friends. She even struck a pose and asked Jiho if she looked sexy. This made Jiho extremely shy and she had to change the subject. At this time, Nai noticed the cake next to him and asked what it was about. Jiho said that Nai had previously said that he liked handmade cakes and mangoes, so he had brought some over. Learning that Jiho had made a special trip just for him, Nai was so moved that he almost burst into tears. Nai had wanted to share it with Jiho, but Jiho said that he didn't like cake, so Nai quickly peeled a sweet potato for Jiho. Jiho felt pretty good after eating it. That's when Nai noticed the injury on Jiho's hand. Nai felt very guilty and distressed about this, and Jiho was also confused by her sudden tenderness. He quickly withdrew his hand and told Nai to quickly wipe the cream off the corner of his mouth. Nai subconsciously wiped it off after hearing this, and Jiho's hormones exploded when he saw Nai's cute appearance licking his fingers. The next second, he couldn't help but press his big lips against her. Nai, who had come to her senses, quickly pushed him away and angrily asked him why he had attacked her unawares. Jiho saw that it was getting late and got up to leave, but when he turned his head, he saw Nai shivering from the cold, so he took off his jacket and put it on Nai. Seeing Jiho suddenly become so gentle, Nai felt even more flustered towards him. The next day, Nai brought some desserts to the office to visit Jiho. When she found that Jiho was not in the office, she took the desserts to comfort the staff. Just then, a major incident suddenly occurred in the company. The ring that was supposed to be on special display in the company store had disappeared without a trace. Jiho was furious when she heard about it, and immediately pointed the finger of accusation at her personal secretary, because the ring had been kept by Secretary Kim the whole time. And Jiho knew that Secretary Kim's mother was sick and she had to support her younger siblings, and she had even borrowed money from loan sharks a while ago because she had no money. She had every motive to commit the crime. Secretary Kim was furious when she heard this and tried to defend herself, but Jiho just slapped her hard in the face, and without saying a word, He had someone take Secretary Kim to the police station. Na-yi couldn't bear to see this, so she followed Secretary Kim to the police station and asked him what had happened during the whole process. Were there any other suspicious people? Secretary Kim said that halfway through, he had helped Jisoo sort out the scattered flyers, but he didn't think that Jisoo was that kind of person. Na-yi suddenly thought of something after hearing this, and she hurriedly ran to ask Jisoo about the situation. But instead, she saw the men from before trying to collect a debt from Jisoo, with no other options. Jisoo had to take out the stolen ring to pay off the debt. Just as the men were debating whether or not to take it, Na-yi appeared, after realizing that it was the woman who had beaten them up. The men had no choice but to retreat. Jisoo also felt very remorseful about stealing the ring, but when he thought about being threatened by the people who wanted to collect the debt every day, Jisoo was still obsessed, so he took the ring when Kim was not looking. Na-yi was very angry when she heard about her behavior and also sympathized with her. She didn't want Jisoo to lose his job, and she didn't want Jisoo to go to jail because of this, so Na-yi took the ring and secretly returned it to Jiho's office to find out what happened. However, her actions were secretly filmed by Yuri. Just as Na-yi secretly rejoiced that everything had returned to normal, Jiho dragged her out of the house, and then took the video of Na-yi returning the ring and yelled at her. Na-yi tried to explain, but Jiho, who was in a rage, wouldn't listen, and finally even said that he had to think about their marriage. Yemin saw this and comforted Na-yi, saying that no matter what happened, he would always stand by her. After hearing the whole story, Mrs. Min immediately flew into a rage at Na-yi and accused her of always ruining things for their family. Na-yi felt extremely guilty after hearing this. However, Mrs. Min's anger was just an act. She knew that Jiho's mother would never break off the engagement because of this incident. After all, Jiho's mother's original intention was to find Ijin to be the scapegoat for their family's curse. Sure enough, the next day, Jiho's mother took the initiative to find Mrs. Min. Not only did she not blame Ijin, she also said that various unexpected events had been affecting the relationship between the two families. She hoped that the marriage date between Jiho and Ijin could be confirmed as soon as possible. Mrs. Min, of course, knew what she was thinking, so she readily agreed, and the two women, each with their own ulterior motives, quickly set a wedding date. Meanwhile, Na-yi's theft had become a huge scandal at the company. The employees were gossiping about her behind her back. Jisoo was worried that Na-yi would be hurt because of her, so she took the initiative to find Jiho and tell her the whole story. After learning the truth, Jiho questioned Na-yi why she hadn't told the truth. Na-yi felt aggrieved after hearing this, because Jiho had never given her a chance to speak in the first place, and Jiho had never believed her. Since Jiho was so unwilling to open up to her, what was the point of her saying so much? After saying this, Na-yi turned and left, leaving Jiho in a deep state of self-reproach. Subsequently, Na-yi went to the supermarket to buy food, and because she was accompanied by Yeeman, her depressed mood was also relieved. The supermarket lady saw how close they were and praised them, saying that they were a loving couple. Na-yi hurriedly explained with a smile that they were brother and sister, but Yeeman was thoughtful after hearing this. Later, when they were leaving the supermarket, Na-yi was attracted by the pirate movie nearby. Yeeman saw that she liked it so much and suggested watching a movie before going home. Just as Na-yi was happily choosing a movie, Jiho called Yeeman. The two's happy date was also interrupted by Jiho's arrival. Na-yi asked Jiho why he was looking for her. Jiho fidgeted for a long time before finally apologizing to Na-yi. Na-yi saw how awkward he was and teased him, saying that it took him so long to say sorry. Then, at Na-yi's pleading, Jiho exceptionally forgave Jisoo. When she got home, Na-yi saw Mrs. Min drinking alone and feeling down. Na-yi asked her concernedly what was wrong. Mrs. Min said helplessly that the date for their wedding had already been set, but they hadn't found Ijin yet. She felt like she would rather die than live. Na-yi felt guilty about the ring incident, and comforted her, saying that she would do her best to help them. However, Na-yi could never have imagined that this was all a conspiracy planned by Mrs. Min, with the sole purpose of getting Na-yi to marry Jiho willingly. Yuri accidentally discovered a video of her rival fighting. Being crafty, she immediately found the uploader of the video to confirm. She then learned a shocking truth. It turns out that there really is someone in the world who looks exactly like Ijin. Recalling the previous encounter between Jisoo and Na-yi, Yuri is even more convinced that the current Ijin is a double. In order to expose Na-yi's identity in public, she deliberately called Ji-yu when Na-yi went to the orphanage to do charity, and asked Na-yi to perform with Ji-yu on the piano at the concert. This sudden turn of events caught Na-yi off guard. Na-yi wanted to use the reason that she had recently been neglecting her relationship as an excuse to get out of it, but Yuri said that she had already prepared the sheet music for her to just play alone, and that Jiho would also be there to support her later. Na-yi had no choice but to agree. As soon as Yuri left, Na-yi hurriedly told Lady Min and Yeeman about the situation. Soon the concert began. Jiho also arrived at the scene full of anticipation. At this time, Na-yi was anxiously turning around in circles. Yeeman, who hurriedly came, tried to trigger the fire alarm, but he couldn't break it open no matter what. Seeing that she couldn't avoid it anymore, he had to go on stage. Then he sat shakily in front of the piano, seeing that the plot was about to succeed. Yuri was extremely pleased on the side. Just then, Nai took a deep breath and her eyes suddenly changed. A beautiful and lively piano piece just sounded. Faced with such a perfect performance, the audience was spellbound. Only Yuri looked confused. Could it be that her previous guesses were all wrong? However, she had no idea that the person on stage was actually the real Eugene. Just before the concert began, Mrs. Min urgently contacted her daughter. She told her to go and solve the problem in front of her. She would figure out how to deal with the exposure of her whereabouts later. If Nai's identity as a double was exposed now, Jiho's mother would definitely try to call off the wedding, and their long-planned plan would fail. Eugene went to the orphanage after hearing this. Nai was stunned the moment she saw Eugene. After the concert, Eugene pretended to be angry and complained that her brother and mother had actually hired someone to impersonate her. Yimin, on the other hand, became suspicious of her sudden appearance. Her mother didn't want her to continue asking questions, so she quickly took Eugene upstairs to rest. The unsuspecting Nai was still rejoicing that Eugene had returned just in time, and that she could now finally end her imposter identity, and no longer have to live in fear. Then Nai handed Eugene a note, filled with everything that had happened with Jiho during this time. When Nai returned the phone to Eugene, Jiho happened to call and invite Eugene to her house. Nai felt inexplicably lost when she saw this. Then Mrs. Min handed Nai a stack of money and said that she now considered Nai her daughter. If Nai wanted to move to Seoul to live, she would be happy for Nai to open a store in the city so that they could see each other often. Nai was moved to hear this. However, kind-hearted as she was, she had no idea that Mrs. Min was doing this to make it easier to use Nai in the future. When Nai went back to her room to pack her things, she saw the coat that Jiho had been afraid to give her. Recalling the bits and pieces of time she had spent with Jiho, she suddenly felt a sense of great reluctance. The next day, Nai went to the mall where Jiho worked. She had planned to leave after leaving the coat at the reception desk. However, Jiho suddenly appeared. Nai was so scared that she quickly hid behind a pillar, but she left behind the cage with the kitten. Jiho recognized the kitten as the one Nai had adopted after just one glance. After discovering that Nai was hiding, he immediately questioned why she was sneaking around. Nai had no choice but to lie and say that she hadn't put on any makeup and didn't want to show her natural face in front of a man. Jiho didn't think much of it after hearing this and just told her to come to her house earlier today. Nai looked at Jiho's receding back, and she knew that this was the last time she would see Jiho. She should have been happy that she had finally ended her life as a double, but her heart suddenly felt empty. That day, Eugene came to Jiho's house as a guest, but the ant asked her to help kill the fish, and Eugene was so scared that she screamed repeatedly. The ant found her behavior very strange. Eugene had no choice but to lie and say that she had a hand injury, and the ant was understanding and stopped troubling Eugene. Later, during dinner, Eugene's slow and careful eating attracted the attention of Chairman Park, because before, Nai always ate like she was starving. Eugene had to lie and say that she had no appetite due to stress. After dinner, Chairman Park called Eugene into his room. She thought that he wanted to tell her something important, but the mischievous Chairman Park instead asked Eugene to play a game with him. Eugene almost let slip because of this. After she reacted, she had to play a game with the chairman, because she had never played such a childish game. Eugene lost badly. Looking at her face full of doodles, she couldn't help but curse Nai. When she got home, Eugene told her mother what had happened today. She felt that Jiho's attitude towards her had undergone a huge change. Her woman's intuition told her that Jiho must have developed a good impression of Nai. After hearing this, Mrs. Min felt that this would be even more beneficial for them. On the other side, Nai returned to the countryside after a long absence, thinking about the many beautiful things she had experienced with Jiho. In an instant, Nai became increasingly nostalgic for Jiho, but she knew she couldn't. To sever her feelings for Jiho, she threw the lucky bracelet that could summon love directly into the sea. But as she got up to leave, a woman in green stopped her and questioned why she had thrown away the lucky stone she had given her. Nai took a closer look and realized that the woman was the one she had saved from jumping off the cliff at the beach. The bracelet was the one the woman had given Nai at that time. The woman saw that Nai would not take the bracelet back no matter what. She told Nai that if she wore the necklace, her wish would come true. Nai thought about it and decided that it was true, so she put it back on. As soon as she put the necklace on, Yeman appeared in front of her in a car. Nai was overjoyed. The woman said that this was her own choice, and that she would have to bear the consequences of whatever happened in the future. Nai didn't understand what the woman meant, but she felt that she wouldn't regret it. Nai then happily ran towards Yeman. After learning that Yeman was the benefactor who paid for her surgery, Grandma Yeman directly treated Yeman to kimchi that shocked the world. Yeman was also very happy to see this food that looked like a state banquet. After dinner, Yeman asked Nai how she was considering opening a store in Seoul. Nai said she was still hesitant because of her grandmother. After all, this is not only her grandmother's hometown, but also the place where her parents rest in peace. When Nai was 13, Her parents went out fishing together, but they were killed by a typhoon. Yeman took her hand and gave her comfort. Nai asked her grandmother if she wanted to live in Seoul, and said that Yeman was willing to open a restaurant for her in Seoul. After hearing this, her grandmother thought that Nai wanted to go out with Yeman. She had a good impression of Yeman and agreed without much consideration, and encouraged Nai to bravely pursue her own happiness. On the other hand, Yuri, in order to find a breakthrough to sabotage Jiho and Ejin's wedding, brought a lot of high-end cosmetics to please Jiho's aunt. As a result, she accidentally learned the secret of Jiho's family's centuries-old curse. In order to make her rival take the blame, Yuri no longer wanted to sabotage the wedding. Instead, she began to find ways to make them get married sooner. For this reason, she also specially gave Ejin a wedding gift. Jiho learned that Yuri had given Ejin a wedding gift. Her burden of Yuri finally lifted. When leaving, Ejin remembered that she and Jiho were going to look at wedding dresses tomorrow, so she told Jiho about it while driving. But she accidentally crashed into another car. This sudden scream scared Jiho. He rushed out of the office regardless of his image, and then sprinted all the way to the parking lot, only to find out that Ejin was fine. Jiho then let out a sigh of relief, while Ejin looked at the flustered Jiho, unbelieving that Jiho was really in love with Nai. On the other side, Chairman Park noticed that his wife had been acting suspiciously lately, so he followed her to the side hall, only to see her acting secretively, and discovered that she was playing with the ancestral embroidered shoes again. Chairman Park questioned his wife about her motives for choosing Ejin as a daughter-in-law. Chairman Park warned his wife that if she continued to have such evil thoughts, he would never forgive her. Unexpectedly, their conversation was heard by Jiho outside the house. Jiho found this hard to accept. He came to the side room where the family gods were worshipped in a daze, and told of the first time he had ever truly loved someone since childhood. However, he did not realize that his true heart would cause harm to others. He really didn't know what to do next. Just as he was about to leave, a white light suddenly appeared behind him. When he looked back, it was his eldest sister, who had always been by his side since childhood. Whenever Jiho was in danger, his eldest sister would always appear in time. Jiho couldn't believe that his guardian angel would harm the person he loved. His eldest sister told him that the key to solving this problem was in his hands. Depending on the decision he made, the outcome would be different. After she said this, his eldest sister disappeared. Jiho thought about it all night and finally made a decision. Later, when Jiho went to look at wedding dresses with Ejin, he directly proposed to dissolve the engagement, and said that he would compensate Ejin's family for all losses. Ejin begged after hearing this, but Jiho was determined to cancel the wedding. After learning about this, Mrs. Min jumped up from her chair in shock. She was worried that her plan would be shelved, but quickly recovered. Before, she was worried that she didn't have an excuse to ask Nai to come back and help her. Now she had a reason to ask Nai to come back and clean up the mess. By now, Nai had already brought her grandmother to Seoul. With Yeman's help, Nai also had a restaurant of her own. After learning that Jiho was going to cancel the engagement, Nai, in order to repay the favor, volunteered to go and see Jiho. At the same time, Jiho also told his parents about his intention to cancel the engagement. Chairman Park asked him why he was doing this. Jiho replied that he didn't want to get married without feelings. After hearing this, Mrs. Park scolded Jiho, saying that marriage was not a game. How could he make the decision to cancel the marriage on his own? Jiho knew what his mother was thinking, so he deliberately said, "Why don't you just marry Yuri? That's what you want anyway." Mrs. Park was instantly speechless, worried that Ejin's family would be affected. Mrs. Park immediately called to reassure Ejin's mother, saying that no matter what Jiho wants to do, their family will hold the wedding on the scheduled date. After hearing this, Mrs. Min was full of pride, because this was all within her expectations. Jiho's mother was indeed more worried about the wedding falling through than she was. Now all they had to do was wait quietly, while Nai went to persuade Jiho to change his mind. Soon, Nai found Jiho, and aggressively questioned him why he wanted to break off the engagement. Jiho, of course, didn't want to say why, so he made an excuse to go to a meeting, and their conversation was overheard by Yuri. Jiho turned his head and proposed to his childhood sweetheart who liked him. Yuri, who had longed to marry him as soon as possible, hesitated, because the Chable family was cursed. Yuri was at a loss for words and didn't know how to respond, and Jiho said that he would not let her have her way. Yuri was desperate after hearing this. She didn't expect Jiho to fall in love with Ejin. Then Nai continued to press Jiho on why he regretted the marriage. Jiho said to let her give up hope that their marriage was originally a deal, and that when you really add it up, the deal was too much of a loss for him. It's fine if the family is average, but the person they want to marry has no advantages, and always gets into trouble, leaving him to clean up the mess. There's nothing about him that's satisfactory. Nai was heartbroken after hearing this, and cried and asked him if everything over this period of time was a lie. Jiho said that he didn't want Nai to ruin her life, and left without looking back. Afterwards, Nai got drunk. She couldn't understand why, even though she was just a substitute. Jiho's heartless breakup still hurt her so much. Yeeman also felt very sad when he saw her like this. In order to prevent Nae from continuing to fall deeper and deeper like this, Yeeman implored her stepmother to let Nae go as soon as she returned home, and let Ee-jin go to Jiho himself to win her back. But Ee-jin said that she never wanted to get married in the first place, and whether or not to dissolve the engagement had nothing to do with her. When Chairman Park learned that his son was only regretting the marriage because of the family curse, he advised Jiho not to believe in groundless rumors. That would only make him regret his decision for the rest of his life. In order to prevent his son from following in his footsteps, Chairman Park decided to send someone to investigate the truth behind his first wife's death. Then he took Nae to the place where his first wife was buried. He then told Nae that he and his first love were very much in love. But on their honeymoon, his first love was ruthlessly taken away in a car accident. It was at this time that rumors began to spread that marrying into their family would be cursed. No matter what choice or decision Nae made after hearing this, Chairman Park would respect her. Nae felt that this was outrageous. At the same time, she was also relieved because Jiho was afraid of losing her. The next day, Jiho's family went to visit her grandmother, who had returned home not long ago. As they were about to enter the door, Mrs. Park reminded Jiho not to tell her grandmother about the cancellation of the engagement. As it turned out, the person who went out to greet them was none other than Nae. The family was stunned when they saw this. Upon asking, they learned that it was the grandmother who had invited her. After learning that her grandmother had asked Nae to cook, Mrs. Park hurried to help out. Worried about her, the resourceful Nae took the opportunity to ask Jiho to help her. Although the two of them argued as soon as they met, it also helped to ease their tense relationship. During the meal, her grandmother praised Nae's cooking. Chairman Park also asked his son to let Nae open a restaurant. For a while, the family atmosphere became incredibly harmonious. Grandma was also very satisfied with Nae. Nae thought Jiho would change his mind because of this, but when they left her grandmother's house, he kicked Nae out of the car and said that no matter what Nae did, he would not change his mind. Nae saw Jiho like this and had to speak frankly. She already knew about the family curse and did not believe in it at all, so she hoped Jiho would stop being afraid. However, Jiho would not let her take risks so easily, so he left without looking back and left Nae behind. On the other side, Yuri asked Ee-jin what he planned to do about Jiho and the cancellation of the engagement. Ee-jin asked her back if she wanted to take advantage of the situation. Unexpectedly, Yuri directly told her about the curse. She also said that Jiho was only doing this because she loved Ee-jin so much that she would do anything to cancel the engagement, so she was very curious about Ee-jin's thoughts. Their conversation was also heard by Yeeman. Then Ee-jin wanted to discuss with Yeeman what to do next, but Yeeman just took the ring and ran out without saying anything. Ee-jin didn't understand what Yeeman meant. After a search, Ee-jin saw her brother's favorite tie. She asked her mother and found out that it was a gift from Nae. Ee-jin was shocked because Yeeman had said before that the tie was a gift from the woman he loved. She never imagined that her brother would fall in love with a country bumpkin who looks exactly like her. Ee-jin finds this ridiculous. Meanwhile, Yeeman finds Nae. He can no longer bear to see Nae stay by Jiho's side. Yeeman takes out a ring and puts it on Nae's hand, proposing to her. Nae is at a loss for words at this sudden confession. She quickly pulls back her hand and refuses. Yeeman asks her if it's because of Jiho. Nae replied that she knew it was impossible with Jiho, but she just couldn't control her heart. And Yeeman went home feeling dejected. Ee-jin angrily questioned how he could like a woman like Nae. Yeeman also angrily replied that it didn't matter if he liked her or not. He had already been rejected. Ee-jin then complained to his mother about how Yeeman could be like this, but his mother felt that things were getting more and more interesting. As long as they use Nae's feelings for Jiho, even if they don't do anything, Nae will take the initiative to replace Ee-jin. The next day, Mrs. Min approached Nae and told her about the curse. Nae said that it was just a rumor. Mrs. Min, however, said that she decided to cancel the marriage for the safety of her daughter. Then she hypocritically warned Nae not to see Jiho again. Nae had no choice but to reluctantly agree. Later, Mrs. Min approached Jiho and said that they had agreed to dissolve the engagement, and asked Jiho not to see Ee-jin again in the future. Of course, the reason she did this was not to protect Nae, but to confuse Jiho's mother. Sure enough, after learning about the dissolution of the engagement, Mrs. Park not only angrily threatened and cajoled Mrs. Min, but also scolded Jiho, and told Jiho to do whatever it took to save the marriage. This was exactly what Madam Min wanted. She wanted everyone to jump into her trap of their own accord. On the other hand, Nae tried to keep herself busy so she wouldn't have time to think, so she and Jisoo opened a restaurant together. With their hard work, the restaurant was doing well. Meanwhile, Jiho was suffering from lovesickness. He worked overtime every day to numb the pain. Secretary Kim felt very bad for him. Soon after, he learned that Jisoo and her restaurant had opened for business. Since Secretary Kim liked Jisoo, he came to congratulate her. Jisoo knew that Nae was uncomfortable meeting Secretary Kim, so she asked Secretary Kim about Jiho's situation instead. Nae then learned that Jiho was also having a hard time. This made Nae feel extremely sad. Under the double blow of overwork and extreme internal pressure, Nai finally couldn't hold on anymore and fell ill. When Madame Min found out, she thought this was a golden opportunity. She immediately told Jiho about it. Seeing the lover she had longed for, Nai thought she was dreaming. Jiho saw that she was fine and got up to leave. Nai saw this and expressed her feelings for Jiho. Jiho, after hearing this, did not want to suppress his feelings anymore. He said that Nai was the first woman to make him move, but he could not continue with Nai because the family curse was real. If something happened to Nai, he would live with self-blame and pain for the rest of his life. After saying this, Jiho turned and left. Nai recalled the good memories she had with Jiho and really couldn't bear this kind of torment. She pulled out the needle in her hand recklessly and rushed out, shouting at Jiho. When she saw Jiho stop in his tracks, Nai rushed up and embraced him. She told Jiho that she was not afraid of the curse at all. However, Jiho once again refused Nai. Nai was now completely desperate. She stood in one place, crying her heart out. Yemin, who witnessed this, felt her heart bleed. On the other side, Chairman Park found out the truth about the death of his first wife. 30 years ago, his mother-in-law followed the two of them to the honeymoon spot. His mother-in-law asked the driver to step away for a while. When the driver returned, he found that his first love had collapsed in a pool of blood, and next to him, his mother-in-law was standing by. While Chairman Park was distracted, Ji-ho, who had rejected Nai, let out his emotions like crazy and smashed a bucket at the shrine of the guardian deity. Chairman Park, who rushed over and saw him being such a wimp, gave him a slap in the face, and then cursed his son as a good-for-nothing. If you are blinded by the curse and don't have the courage to overcome your fear, then just give up. Jiho was in unbearable pain after hearing this. On the other side, Nai found Ee-jin's mother together. She wanted to marry Jiho in place of Ee-jin, and she was willing to live even if it was only for one day. But if in the end she did not die under the curse, then she hoped that Madame Min could let her tell the truth about the body double, and then stay by Jiho's side forever as Nai. After hearing this, Madame Min first pretended to be angry and refused, saying that she didn't want Nai to take this risk. But after Nai's desperate pleas, she agreed. Nai then found Jiho, and said that she was willing to marry Jiho even if she only lived for one day. Jiho was very angry and directly kicked her out of the car. Unexpectedly, Nai stood in the middle of the road the next second. Jiho hurriedly got out of the car and pulled Nai to the side of the road, angrily scolding her for being crazy. Nai said that she couldn't live a day without Jiho. Jiho didn't know how to persuade Nai after hearing this. Nai said that no matter how difficult the future would be, she was willing to face it with Jiho. She didn't want to regret missing Jiho for the rest of her life. Jiho was also moved after hearing this. The two finally let go of their fears and embraced each other. The next day, Nai found Jiho's mother to express her wish to resume the marriage contract. Mrs. Park asked her if she was not afraid of the curse. Nai replied that she did not want to miss Jiho more than that. Meanwhile, Jiho also found Ee-jin's mother and asked Mrs. Min to let her and Ee-jin start over. The scheming Mrs. Min of course did not immediately agree and directly said that she was concerned about her daughter's life. After hearing this, Jiho simply let go of her dignity and knelt in front of Mrs. Min. Seeing this, Madame Min angrily drove Jiho away, but as soon as Jiho left, she immediately called Nai and told her what had happened. Nai was overwhelmed with emotions after hearing this. The next day, she went to the office and teased Jiho, saying that she had been out of the house yesterday and had missed the super exciting scene. What a pity! Jiho saw that Nai was so heartless and complained to her that it was such a bad time to joke around. Nai hugged Jiho and said that they could finally be together now. Jiho was also overwhelmed with emotion after hearing this. On the other side, Yemin discovered by accident that Ee-jin actually had two cell phones. After checking the call history, Yemin discovered that during the period when Ee-jin had previously eloped, his stepmother had been in contact with Ee-jin in secret. Combined with the receipts found in the stepmother's office before, and the stepmother's abnormal actions of guiding Nai to stay in Seoul step by step, and finally let Nai marry Jiho, Yemin then realized that the stepmother had intended Nai to be the scapegoat from the beginning. On the other hand, Nai was also worried that the curse would come true, so she proposed to Jiho to secretly hold a wedding ceremony without telling their families. She also said that she hoped for a simple wedding, without a beautiful wedding dress or a diamond ring, as long as there were the blessings of the majestic leaves and sunlight. Jiho prepared a surprise for Nai so that she would not feel wronged. Jiho told Nai to wait for him at the mall. Just as Nai was waiting impatiently, suddenly all the lights went out. This startled Nai. When she looked up, she saw 3 moons of different shapes in front of her. Then a ball of green wool rolled to her feet. Nai picked up the wool and saw that the other end was Jiho. Jiho said romantically that the moon god had now firmly bound the two of them together with the wool. No matter if they were worlds apart or the sky fell apart, they would never be separated. At this point, the mood reached a climax, so the two immediately mixed together like crazy. After eating and drinking, Jiho sent Nai back to Ee-jin's house. Seeing how Nai and Jiho were so affectionate with each other, Ee-jin asked Nae if she would regret it. Nae replied that she would never regret it. Ee-jin couldn't help but mock Nae after hearing this, and said that she was very grateful for Nae's choice, which would make them both Jiho's brides. The only regret is that only she will accompany Jiho to the end. Nae was extremely sad after hearing this, and this scene happened to be seen by Yuri, who was hiding in the shadows. Yuri was so scared that she was shocked in place. Then she followed Nae to the restaurant and found Nae with Yeeman. Yuri was shocked again. Now she finally understood why Ee-jin was so calm. She had planned to tell Jiho's mother about it, but then she thought that someone would have to take the blame eventually, so she gave up the idea. Yeeman learned that Nae had gone to see Jiho again and told him about his stepmother's plan. Nae was extremely shocked when she heard. Yeeman said that if the curse was not true, his stepmother would definitely find a way to get rid of Nae, so he hoped that Nae would not take this risk again. Nae was instantly terrified after hearing this. However, for the sake of love, she resolutely chose to continue with Jiho. Before getting married, Nae was afraid that something might happen to her, so she took her grandmother shopping to buy clothes. She also went out to eat Western food with her grandmother, which she had been reluctant to do. Later, she found Ee-jin and said that she was ready to marry Jiho. If something really happened to her, she hoped that Ee-jin would take good care of Jiho. Ee-jin couldn't understand why Nae was being so silly. Nae told Ee-jin that this was love. This was also the only way for her to love Jiho. Then Nae told Jisoo that she was going back to her hometown. The perceptive Jisoo immediately guessed that she was lying, and only after repeated questioning did she realize that Nae was going to marry Jiho the next day. The next day, Jiho dressed up nicely and said goodbye to his father. Chairman Park was very pleased to see his son finally free from his shackles, and as Mrs. Park watched Jiho's receding back, she only hoped that the curse would be fulfilled soon. Then Nae and Jiho arrived at a church. They didn't have wedding dresses or diamond rings, nor the blessings of family and friends. There were only two people who were willing to give everything for each other. Two people whose hearts transcend life and death. However, at that moment, they were sweeter than any other couple in the world. This was Nae's happiest day, and also the last day of her life. Soon it was time for their wedding night. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, and the cup in Nae's hand fell to the ground. As the saying goes, a moment in spring is worth 1,000 in gold. Nae didn't want to spend her last moments in fear and anxiety, so she sat down on the bed with Jiho. The mood was just right, so they immediately started tasting each other's lips. Jiho woke up from the bed, full and satisfied, but she found that Nae had disappeared. On the other side, Jisoo was really worried about Nae, so she told Yeeman about Nae and Jiho getting married. Yeeman was shocked and immediately found her sister to ask about Nae's whereabouts, but Ee-jin refused to say anything. Yeeman then had to produce evidence that her stepmother and Ee-jin had deliberately made Nae the scapegoat. She threatened to go to Jiho's house and expose their conspiracy. Ee-jin had no choice but to tell Yeeman where Nae was. After Yeeman left, Ee-jin hurriedly told her mother about it, but her mother was not at all panicked, because at that moment, she was standing outside Nae in Jiho's bridal chamber. No matter if Nae would die on her wedding night, tomorrow she would make Nae disappear from this world. Jiho woke up and found Nae missing. He searched frantically for her. At that moment, Nae was taken by a mysterious force to the edge of a cliff. Seeing that she was about to be separated from Jiho forever, Nae could not help but shed tears of sadness, but then a sudden white light appeared before her eyes, and the previous fierce older sister suddenly turned into an amiable and kind-looking person, who told Nae that nothing would happen, and that the so-called curse was actually just a test of whether their love was true, because Nae would never betray Jiho, so she had passed the test. But what was even more terrifying than this test was the reality that Nae would have to face in the future. The people who really wanted Nae dead were not Nae herself, but the people around her. Jiho is also likely to abandon her when she faces the truth. Her eldest sister asks her if she still wants to continue despite this. Nae, however, does not hesitate and says that she is willing to go on. After hearing this, her eldest sister extends her hand to wish Nae good luck, and then slowly disappears from Nae's field of vision. When Nae comes back to her senses, Jiho has already come to her side. After locking eyes, the two tightly embrace. Yeeman arrives at the villa in a hurry, only to find it empty. He looked around and finally saw Nae and Jiho walking down the hill. Just when Yeeman felt like he could finally breathe a sigh of relief, his stepmother's henchman knocked him unconscious. Then his stepmother came up to the two of them and was about to take Nae away. Before leaving, Nae wanted to tell Jiho his true identity, but Jiho suddenly received an urgent phone call. His grandmother had unexpectedly fainted and was hospitalized. His grandmother wanted to meet Jiho's fiancée. Jiho then planned to take Nae with him. However, Mrs. Min was not about to let Nae go so easily. She said that she had to pay her respects to her in-laws and that she would take Nae back to get ready before going over there. Jiho left without suspecting anything. When Yeeman woke up, he found that his stepmother had already taken Nae far away. The innocent Nae thought that Mrs. Min really wanted to help her, but Mrs. Min coldly said that she had completed her task and could now withdraw from the stage. Then several big men sat in the car, and Nae, who had come to her senses, tried to resist, but Mrs. Min threatened her with the lives of her grandmother and Jisoo. Nai had no choice but to comply. All of this was witnessed by Yeman, who was following behind, and he quickly followed quietly. Meanwhile, Mrs. Min walked into the hospital with a heartless pace. Jean had been waiting here for a long time. The mother and daughter exchanged glances and revealed a wicked smile. When Jiho saw his new wife again, he didn't realize that his beloved woman had already been replaced. The reason why grandma wanted to see Jean was to tell her the secret of the curse. On the other side, Yeman followed the strong men who kidnapped Nai all the way to an abandoned warehouse. While the strong men were not paying attention, Yeman quickly untied Nai and tried to take her away. But they were discovered by the strong men, so the two had to fight with the strong men. As they were outnumbered, they soon could not defend themselves. Seeing that Nai was no longer able to fight back, the strong men picked up a stick and smashed it down on Nai. Yeman saw this and immediately used his body to protect Nai from all harm, and he fell down due to his severe injuries. Just as the strong men were about to finish off Nai and Yeman, a group of black-clad bodyguards suddenly appeared. The strong men, seeing the situation was not good, were scared and kept backing up. Nai and Yeman were thus saved. Mrs. Min was shocked when she learned that the plan had failed. Meanwhile, Jiho was leisurely drinking wine at Jean's house. Mrs. Min quickly found an excuse to get rid of Jiho and hurriedly went out the door. She went to the hospital and learned that the plan had failed. Mrs. Min didn't care about her son's injury at all. Instead, she angrily questioned her subordinate why the plan had failed. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Mrs. Park walked up to her and questioned her who Nai was, who was sitting in front of the operating room. Mrs. Min was panicked and didn't know what to do, but before she could explain, Mrs. Park dialed Jean's phone in front of her. Then Mrs. Park threw the photo of Nai in front of Mrs. Min. Only then did Mrs. Min realize that Mrs. Park had already learned the truth. She warned Min that overreacting would only invite trouble. If Min gave up on the marriage now, she would not pursue it further. However, Min looked at her with disdain. She then took out a recording. It was the recording of Jiho's grandmother telling Jean about the curse. Back then, before Chairman Park married his first love, Mrs. Park and her family also knew about the curse. In order to break the curse, they let Chairman Park and his first love get married first. After Chairman Park married his first love, Jiho's grandmother realized that Chairman Park's first love was fine and that the curse was not real. Jiho's grandmother was very unhappy about this and wanted her daughter to become the mistress of the house. So she ran Chairman Park's first love over with her car. She wanted Jean and Jiho to get married without any worries. But Jean secretly recorded the secret. Mrs. Park was shocked when she heard this. Meanwhile, Mrs. Min took the opportunity to ask her if she had thought carefully about breaking off the engagement. She hoped that Mrs. Park would give her a good answer tomorrow, or she really didn't know what she would do. After hearing this, Mrs. Park's arrogant attitude instantly disappeared. After returning home, Mrs. Park was filled with grief. She never imagined that her mother would do such a foolish thing for her, and because she herself also believed in the curse, she almost ruined her son's life. After thinking about it, in order to prevent her mother's crime from being exposed, and to prevent the future group from being ruined by the scandal, Mrs. Park decided to continue the marriage contract between the two families with Mrs. Min. But in order to buy time to find a solution, she used Jiho's grandmother's illness as an excuse to ask Mrs. Min to postpone the wedding. The cunning Mrs. Min immediately saw through her scheme and agreed, on the condition that Mrs. Park first transfer the shares of the future group to Jean, and asked her to take care of Nai's matter. Park had no choice but to agree to everything in order to keep the family secret. On the other hand, Yeman had been rescued but was still in a critical condition. Nai broke down when she saw this. Just then, Park found Nai. She asked Nai not to appear in front of Jiho in the future. As compensation, she would ensure that Nai would no longer be threatened. Nai said it didn't matter what happened to her, but she would never forgive the person who had turned Yeman into this. After hearing this, Mrs. Park advised her that forgiveness is something that the powerful give to the powerless. Nai obviously does not have this right now. Nai then asked her why she chose to stand by and do nothing instead of revealing the truth. Mrs. Park could only reply that she does not have the ability to forgive others right now either. On the other side, Yuri thought that after the fake incident, she would easily become Jiho's wife. But Mrs. Park told her to give up all hope. Yuri, who was desperate, was thinking of a tactful way to tell Jiho about the fake heiress. Just then, she saw Nai trying to say goodbye to Jiho. Seeing Jiho and Jean love each other, Nai took off her wedding ring and left. Yuri, who witnessed this, suddenly had a plan. She used the excuse of wishing the couple a happy marriage to ask Jean why he wasn't wearing a wedding ring, and jokingly asked Jiho if she had given the ring to another woman. Jean trembled with fear after hearing this. Jiho was also very curious as to why Jean wasn't wearing her ring. Jean had no choice but to lie and say that she had forgotten it at home. However, Jiho's suspicious mind was immediately aroused by Jean's panicked reaction. That night, Jiho was walking Jean home when they passed by a street stall. He stopped and took Jean to eat the spicy fried rice cakes that Nai liked best. As a result, Yi-jin disliked the taste after just 2 bites, and this made Ji-ho even more suspicious about Yi-jin's identity. In order to verify his suspicions, Ji-ho took Yi-jin to the park where he and Na-yi had previously dated. Then he mentioned the fact that Na-yi had worn a sexy suit before, and deliberately got a few obvious plot points wrong. But Yi-jin not only did not correct him, but continued to follow his lead. At this moment, Ji-ho finally understood that the woman in front of him was not his beloved wife. Although he already had an answer in his heart, Ji-ho still wanted to make a final test. Ji-ho immediately pressed his big lips against her. Yi-jin, on the other hand, appeared to be extremely resistant. Ji-ho was now completely sure that the woman in front of him was not the Yi-jin he knew. He directly questioned Yi-jin who she really was. Unexpectedly, Yi-jin took the lead and blamed Ji-ho for being fickle, and even asked him if he wasn't his wife. Then who else could it be? Ji-ho was suddenly speechless. Yi-jin returned home very worried, but her mother calmly said that even if Ji-ho knew about Na-yi's existence, Mrs. Park would find a way to stop Ji-ho. They just had to sit back and wait for the show to begin. On the other side, Na-yi was very surprised to see Yuri appear in her shop, and Yuri said she had known Na-yi's identity for a long time. If it wasn't for her telling Mrs. Park about it, Na-yi would have been killed by Yi-jin and the others on the day of the kidnapping. Na-yi asked her why she was looking for her. Yuri asked Na-yi why she had previously been willing to risk her life to be with Ji-ho, and now suddenly gave up. If it were her, she would do anything to get Ji-ho back. Na-yi said after hearing this that she also really wanted to get him back, but realized that her greed would only bring harm and pain to the people around her. Na-yi asked Yuri not to tell Ji-ho the truth, because she didn't want Ji-ho to suffer the same pain as she had. Yuri felt great sympathy for Na-yi after hearing this. The next day, Ji-ho found Yuri and asked her about Yi-jin. Yuri was glad that Ji-ho had figured it out so quickly, and then she took out Na-yi's ring and told Ji-ho that there was a woman in the world who looked exactly like Yi-jin. Ji-ho was shocked when he heard this. He wanted to know where Na-yi was, but Yuri advised him not to make a fuss, or someone would kill her before he could. Ji-ho felt a mixture of emotions when he heard this. He wanted to find Na-yi but didn't know how to start investigating. Just when he was at a loss for ideas, Secretary Kim mentioned Jisoo to him while passing him a note. Ji-ho instantly remembered that Na-yi had repeatedly protected Jisoo before. This made him very suspicious that Na-yi and Jisoo had known each other for a long time. With this question in mind, he nervously arrived at Na-yi's store. As a result, he really saw Na-yi, who looked exactly like Yi-jin. Ji-ho was overjoyed and tried to take Na-yi, but Na-yi broke free and said she was not Yi-jin. Ji-ho was furious and asked why she did that. Na-yi reluctantly said that pretending to be an imposter would make her a lot of money, and she could even have such a nice restaurant. Who would refuse such a thing? Ji-ho asked her if she had never been sincere with him before. Na-yi replied that an imposter could not be sincere. Ji-ho's heart aches after hearing this and she can only leave in anger. After returning home, Ji-ho angrily scolds her mother and blames her for not telling her the truth earlier, and for conspiring with Yi-jin's family to deceive her. Mrs. Park immediately puts the blame on Na-yi and says that it's all because Na-yi is using Ji-ho to make money. She also says that Yi-jin's family are even more vicious than snakes and scorpions. His mother advised him to think of the family and not to act rashly. She would definitely help Ji-ho take care of everything. The next day, Ji-ho asked Secretary Kim to find out about Na-yi. The more he read, the angrier he became. So he got up and went to find Na-yi. At the same time, Na-yi was also distracted by Ji-ho's situation. She accidentally knocked over the dishes she had just cleaned up. Ji-ho saw Na-yi in such a mess and started to mock her. Na-yi felt very uncomfortable, but in order to make Ji-ho feel better, she endured it in silence. Then Na-yi said that she still had to run her business and asked Ji-ho to leave. Unexpectedly, Ji-ho threw the money on the ground. Na-yi could do anything for money. After hearing this, Na-yi asked if he was satisfied now. Ji-ho said that he would not let Na-yi go easily. Then he angrily left. That day, Ji-ho even brought Yuri to the family gathering. Yi-jin felt very uncomfortable when she saw this. She deliberately pretended to have a close relationship with her mother-in-law. However, Ji-ho acted strangely and told Yi-jin to be on guard. This was because her mother had liked Yuri very much since she was a child, and had long decided that Yuri would be her daughter-in-law. Suddenly, the situation became extremely awkward. Everyone's faces were extremely embarrassed. Yuri couldn't stand it and got up and left directly. Ji-ho saw this and immediately chased after her. Yi-jin was furious when she saw them like this. After asking, she realized that Ji-ho knew the truth. Yuri asked Ji-ho if he was crazy, but Ji-ho asked Yuri if she wanted to marry him, because every time he saw Yi-jin, he would think of Na-yi. It was really painful. However, Yuri rejected Ji-ho because Yuri found that her love was worthless in front of Na-yi, and Na-yi has always been quietly guarding Ji-ho's back. Ji-ho felt like 1,000 arrows piercing his heart after hearing this. He could only numb himself with alcohol. The next day, Yi-jin, who had learned the truth, did not panic at all. She blamed all the bad things on Na-yi. She said that it was Na-yi who first asked for a trade. Afterwards, Na-yi's demands on them became more and more excessive. Her brother Yeman was seriously injured trying to stop her from continuing to escalate. She also said that Na-yi and Yeman were deeply in love. So Ji-ho Forget the past and start over with me. Jiho didn't believe what Jin said after hearing it, and left with a sneer on her face. Jin was super angry when he saw this, since Yeman was injured and hospitalized. Nai has been taking care of him every day. Jiho secretly went to the hospital but saw Nai smiling next to Yeman, which made him inexplicably jealous. Jiho sneered Nai is not professional at relationships at all. This made Nai immediately irritable, and scolded him to be direct if he wants to take revenge, instead of pretending to be pitiful in front of him all the time. In order to continue to take revenge on Nai, Jiho made a group reservation for 30 people at Nai's restaurant. After Nai and the others had worked hard to prepare, Jiho deliberately cancelled it because the food was too bad. Nai's grandmother was so angry that she took out the salt and threw it at Jiho. Later, when he returned to the company, Jiho asked Yuri about Nai. He then learned that Nai had risked her life to marry him. Jiho also learned that Yeman was injured because Nai was kidnapped. He suddenly became very sympathetic towards Nai, seeing that Nai had to go to the hospital to take care of Yeman after finishing work at the restaurant. Jiho couldn't help but feel that this silly woman only knows how to work all day long. He couldn't bear to see Nai work so hard, so he simply lied and said that he was also there to visit Isien. Then he helped Nai take care of Yeman, but after a while, he fell asleep because he was so tired. When Nai saw this, she scolded him and sent him back. When Jiho returned home, he happened to run into Jin. Jin told him to stop being so nice to Nai. Every move he makes will be reported to his mother. If Jiho continues to hang out with Nai, her mother will not sit idly by. Jiho listened and told Jin to mind his own business. Then he walked away with a disdainful look on his face. When he returned to the house, his mother announced that she would be marrying Jin tomorrow. Jiho didn't say anything, but a decision was made in his heart. On the day of the wedding, Jiho was late. The reporters were about to stand up and yell. Yuri had no choice but to lie and say Jiho had a car accident on the way and was being treated in the hospital. The press conference was cancelled for the day. Mrs. Min was furious and immediately ordered her subordinates to send the photos of Jiho and Nai's secret wedding to all the media outlets, and the news of Jiho's secret wedding spread like wildfire. Chairman Park was furious when he heard the news and angrily asked his wife if she was hiding something from him. His wife could only repeatedly deny it. Jiho found Nai and took her to his doorstep without saying a word, and said he would take Nai to meet his father and then tell everyone the truth. He felt that his father would definitely be on their side. However, Nai was not only worried about herself, she was also worried that the people around her would be hurt because of it. Just then, Nai suddenly received an urgent call from the hospital and learned that Yeman had woken up. She immediately left Jiho and rushed to the hospital. When Jiho arrived at the hospital, he saw Nai and Yeman hugging each other tightly. Jiho thought that Nai only had Yeman in her heart, and he completely gave up on Nai. Later, Jin, in order to prevent Jiho from messing up again, gave Jiho a recording of his grandmother. Jiho was shocked to hear it. He then understood why his mother insisted that he marry Jin. Jin then threatened Jiho again, telling him to quickly hold a press conference to announce their marriage, or she would definitely send the recording to the media. Jiho had no choice but to agree to Jin's request. The next day, Jin took Jiho to the hospital to visit Yeman. Yeman sent Jiho away and then scolded Jin, accusing her of pestering Jiho. Jin was very angry after hearing this and said that she was his sister. But why did her brother always help outsiders? If that was the case, then why not just run away with Nai? Yeman was speechless after hearing this. When they left the hospital, they met Nai. The scheming Jin immediately took Jiho's arm and watched the two of them go away intimately. Nai's heart ached. After returning to the company, Jin still wanted to continue being as intimate as they had been at the hospital. However, Jiho simply pushed her away and said that the two were not close enough to do that. Jin was very upset after hearing this. At that moment, Yuri came and called Jiho to a meeting. Jiho turned around without saying a word and left. Yuri saw this and mocked Jin, saying that she would never be able to win Jiho's heart. However, Jin told Yuri to hurry up and find her next company, because she will soon become the mistress of the Mirai Group, and by then she will definitely make Yuri look bad. Jin's despicable face made Yuri, who has a very high self-esteem, extremely irritable. Unable to bear it, she had to go to Nai's shop to get drunk. The more she drank, the more she felt that Nai was very wronged. It is clear that Nai has given everything, but why is it that Jin, whom she hates, has reaped the fruits of victory? However, Nai has long since become accustomed to it herself. Whether it was when she was a child and both her parents died or when her grandmother almost died of a heart attack, her life has always been tragic. Yuri couldn't help but feel sympathy for Nai after hearing this. On the other hand, Mrs. Min's company is also operating normally because she has obtained funding from the Mirai Group. She told Yeman to get out of the hospital and hurry back to work. Yeman mocked her after hearing this, saying that there is no one who can replace her, so even if they are only half-blooded they have to be used. Instead of getting angry, his stepmother smiled and admitted that he was right and told him to rest well, because Jiho and Jin would announce their marriage tomorrow. there would be endless work at the company. Yeeman couldn't believe that Jiho had given up on Nai so easily. He went to find Jiho to fight for Nai, but Jiho said that Nai was just an emotional cheater to him. The one who should be responsible for Nai was Yeeman, who had fallen in love with her. Yeeman was furious when he heard this. He never imagined that Nai's love, which she risked her life for, would end up like this. He couldn't help but grab Jiho by the collar and declare war. After Ehyun left, Jiho also woke up completely. Then he found Nai again and wanted to run away together. But Nai didn't want Jiho to give up everything because of her, so she resolutely refused and told Jiho never to come find her again. Jiho was completely desperate after hearing this. In the end, he could only leave in disappointment. Nai looked at Jiho's lonely back and tears immediately flowed down her face. The next day, Nai returned the restaurant to Ejin's mother. Mrs. Min asked her if she was doing this for her pride. Nai replied that she just wanted to sever all ties with this place. Meanwhile, Jiho also held a press conference to announce his marriage to Ejin. Seeing that the plan was going so well, Ejin and her mother let out a smug and evil laugh. Unexpectedly, Jiho announced in public that his fiancée was Nai. This shocked everyone present. Seeing this, Mrs. Park didn't know what to do. Mrs. Min was so angry that she got up on the spot and left. Only Yuri smiled in admiration at Jiho's reckless domineering for Nai. Soon, Chairman Park received the news. When he learned that Jiho's Nai was Ejin's double, Chairman Park fell over in anger. Jiho felt very guilty when he saw his father like this. He thought his father would blame him for his reckless behavior, but his father said that he had done a good job. Mistakes should be corrected. What he feels sorry for is that Jiho and Nai will have to bear a lot of suffering in the future. At this time, Ejin was furious after being humiliated by Jiho in public at the press conference. At this time, her eldest sister also came to mock her. In the end, she became someone else's shadow. Ejin vowed that Jiho would have to pay a painful price. Nai also saw Jiho's marriage announcement trending on the internet. Just as she didn't know how to respond, Jiho found her and came over. Nai was very angry that Jiho was so reckless, so she didn't give Jiho a good face. But as soon as she turned her head, she was smiling and tying Yeeman's tie, and gave Yeeman a pair of shoes as a gift for leaving the hospital. This made Jiho beside her not know what to do. Nai also prepared a table full of food for Yeeman to celebrate his discharge. Poor Jiho could only watch Nai from outside the door as she helped Yeeman eat. He couldn't stand it anymore and rushed in to scold Yeeman for not being able to feed himself. When Grandma saw him, she lost her temper. Yeeman saw this and came to the rescue, saying that Jiho was his friend. At this time, Jiho saw the notice that the restaurant was closed. After learning that Nai was going to escape from here, he hugged Nai. Grandma was furious when she saw Jiho like this, and sternly asked him what he was doing. Jiho answered directly that he could not live without Nai. On the other side, Mrs. Min began to take revenge on Jiho. She deliberately leaked the news that Chairman Park had fainted, causing the sudden stock price of the group to plummet. For a while, the company was in a panic. At the same time, Ejin was also preparing to announce Jiho's grandmother's recording. After listening to the recording, Yeeman understood why his stepmother was so confident in fighting against Myri Group. He wanted to persuade Ejin to stop, because this would only harm others and not benefit oneself. But Ejin, who was angry, simply could not listen. The next day, Yeeman returned the restaurant contract to Nai, saying that he had been entrusted by Jiho, and also telling her about how his stepmother had threatened Jiho's family. Nai then realized that Jiho had gambled everything for her. Nai was moved to tears. She immediately rushed to Jiho's office, and without saying a word, embraced him. Jiho was overwhelmed by Nai's sudden affection. Nai scolded him for being so foolish, how he could risk everything for a woman like her, while Jiho said that if he could get Nai, he would have everything, and the two finally reconciled and made up. That day, Ejin's mother threatened Mrs. Park with the scandal at the company, but Mrs. Park had already realized her mistake, and felt that she had fallen into such a state because of her insatiable desire, and she advised Mrs. Min and herself to end it there. However, greedy Mrs. Min was unwilling to give up, and directly questioned Mrs. Park. "Aren't you afraid of carrying the label of murderer for the rest of your life?" Mrs. Park asked her in return. How would Ejin feel if she knew that her mother had committed all kinds of dirty crimes? Mrs. Min was instantly speechless and directly collapsed in her chair. Unwilling to accept this, she immediately called her subordinates and prepared to make public the scandal of Jiho's grandmother's murder. However, what she never expected was that Jiho had already held a press conference, and preemptively took the initiative to reveal her grandmother's murder crime. After learning about this, Jiho's grandmother did not blame her daughter and grandson, but instead felt that the stone that had been weighing on her heart had finally been lifted. Then she passed away with a relaxed face. After seeing the news that Jiho had blown the whistle, Ejin was so angry that she almost died where she stood. Mrs. Min also sighed that Jiho's operation was really wonderful. Now she has to fight to the death with the Park family. Yeeman saw this and persuaded them to stop, but Ejin and her mother were determined to make the Jiho family pay with their blood. Unexpectedly, at that moment, a group of police officers broke in. Before they could understand the situation, Mr. Zhang was arrested by the police for suspected murder. Although Na Yi did not initiate legal proceedings out of respect for Yimin, the police dared not easily release Mrs. Min under the pressure of Mrs. Park. Jin had to find Mrs. Park in order to save her mother, and returned all the shares of the Myri group to Mrs. Park. Then she fell to her knees and begged Mrs. Park to spare her mother. At this point, Mrs. Park no longer wanted to continue the fight, so she let Mrs. Min go. Then Mrs. Park returned her husband's diary of his first love to him, and said that it was all her fault. Her own desires had ruined the happiness of Chairman Park and Ji-ho. She was not qualified to continue to stay in this family. The wife hoped that her husband would agree to divorce her. Chairman Park tried to stop her, but his wife was determined. Meanwhile, Ji-ho approached Na Yi again. Seeing that Na Yi and the others were going to the sauna, he followed them. Since rich Ji-ho had never been to such a place before, he looked more like a bumpkin. Seeing that Na Yi and Ji-ho were so affectionate, Grandma's attitude towards Ji-ho also improved a lot. Jin saw that the two were becoming more and more affectionate with each other, and became infuriated. In order to destroy their happiness, Jin called Ji-ho to her house on the pretext of adding something to the wine when Ji-ho wasn't paying attention. According to Jin, this was a farewell drink. Ji-ho didn't hesitate and gulped it down. Then Ji-ho got up and left. At this time, Na Yi had a nightmare. In her dream, her eldest sister told her that Ji-ho was in danger. Frightened, she hurriedly called Ji-ho on the phone, but Ji-ho was safe and sound. In fact, Jin had never intended to harm Ji-ho. Many years ago, when Jin first met Ji-ho, she had fallen in love with her at first sight, but Ji-ho had always treated her with indifference. That was why she had so much hatred for Ji-ho. Now, seeing that she had personally delivered Ji-ho into Na Yi's hands, she had no more attachment to this world, so Jin drank the wine with the poison in it. Lady Min was distraught when she saw her daughter collapse. She felt that it was all Na Yi's fault. Losing her mind, Lady Min rushed to Na Yi's restaurant. Without saying a word, she grabbed Na Yi's neck. It looked as if Na Yi was about to be strangled to death. At that moment, the eldest sister possessed Na Yi's body. Lady Min was so scared that she let go of her hands. It turned out that 100 years ago, the eldest sister was strangled to death by Min's wife's previous life. At that time, Min's wife's previous life and her daughter were working as maids in Ji-ho's house. On this day, the head of the family returned from studying abroad, and everyone in the house went out to greet her. She was instantly attracted to the new face of the eldest sister in the crowd. After asking, she learned that before, Mrs. Park suddenly had abdominal pain on her way back from praying. When she was stuck in the deep mountains, the eldest sister saved her. Mrs. Park pitied her because she was deaf, itchy, and homeless, so she kindly took her in. Soon after, the eldest sister accidentally spilled water on Mr. Park. It was this accidental contact that made the eldest sister accidentally discover that Mr. Park had a migraine, so she used her superb medical skills to cure Mr. Park's illness. In gratitude, Mr. Park even specially gave her the name Yumin. The eldest sister was very happy to have her own name for the first time. Mr. Park also gradually fell in love with Yumin. For this reason, Mr. Park also gave her a bracelet as a token of his love. Mrs. Park was furious when she found out, but there was nothing she could do in those days. That night, Yumin prepared to avenge her parents while Mr. Park slept, because Mr. Park's parents were the ones who had caused Yumin's family to be wiped out. But just as she was about to succeed, she stopped, because at that moment, she had fallen deeply in love with Mr. Park. After investigating the previous life of Mrs. Min and learning Yumin's secret, she told Mr. Park about it, and took out poison and deliberately framed Yumin. Mr. Park was furious when he heard this, and went to confront Yumin with a 40-meter-long sword in his hand. But Yumin, unable to speak, was unable to defend herself. Mr. Park swung the sword at Yumin, but in the end, he just cut the candle next to him and let Yumin go. But at that moment, Yumin realized that she was pregnant. When Mrs. Park heard this, she was terrified that Yumin would take her place. So Mrs. Min's past life came up with a poison plan for her. While Yumin was weak after giving birth, the previous life of Madame Min directly strangled Yumin to death. And then she set her sights on Yumin's newborn baby, which happened to be seen by her daughter, who quickly rushed forward, pushed her mother to the ground, and fled with the baby. Park saw that this was the case, and as she was unable to bear children, she took this child as a gift from heaven. In order to keep this secret, Park gave the previous life of Madame Min a lot of money to make her disappear forever. Since then, Mrs. Min's past life has been living in fear of murder all day. Now that all the memories of her past life have flooded back into her mind, Mrs. Min is so scared that she runs away. Na Yi also faints. Ji-ho is shocked to find Na Yi on the ground. At this time, Jin, who has been rescued, also develops aphasia. The whole person is also sickly, as if he has become a living dead. At the same time, Mrs. Min began to become more and more crazy. To take revenge on Na Yi and Ji-ho, she started a rumor online that Na Yi had seduced Jin's fiancé Ji-ho. causing Ee-jin to commit suicide. Everyone suddenly felt that Ee-jin was the victim. Nae and Jiho immediately became the targets of public outcry. Angry netizens even rushed to Nae's restaurant and pelted her with eggs. Jiho saw this and immediately rushed forward to protect Nae, warning everyone that if anyone hurt Nae, he would definitely pursue it to the end. At the same time, the Mirai group also suffered a heavy blow from public opinion, and with the boycott of netizens, the group has reached the brink of bankruptcy. Jiho did not want to continue fighting with Mrs. Min. He wanted to make a deal with Mrs. Min by reinvesting in Ee-jin's company, and then having Ee-jin come forward to clarify the rumors. But Mrs. Min said that her daughter is now living every day like she is dying. The only thing she wants to do is avenge her daughter's death. She wants to make Nae and Jiho live in hell, even if Jiho gives her the entire group. She doesn't care. Jiho sees how extreme she is and has to give up. The company's problems have not been resolved, and there is a major problem in Jiho's family. Mrs. Park is unwilling to accept Nae, because every time she sees Nae, she will remember herself believing in the family curse. This kind of life is really painful. In order to help Jiho and Nae, she simply left the house. Nae learned that Ee-jin was sick and went to the hospital to visit him. She took Ee-jin's hand, but Ee-jin was so scared that he looked like he had seen a ghost. This made Nae feel extremely guilty and sad. Nae thought back on what had happened during this period of time. She felt that it was all her fault. In order to let other people find their own happiness, Nae decided to take her grandmother and leave Seoul. And Jiho, when she spoke to him, she thought about their impending separation and couldn't help but shed tears. Unaware of this, Jiho sweetly asked Nae to sing to lull him to sleep. Little did he know that this would be the last time he would speak to Nae. The next day, Jiho went to the restaurant to look for Nae, but all he found was a farewell letter Nae had left for him. At that moment, Jiho felt as if his heart had been ripped out. Meanwhile, Ee-jin also received the news that Nae had left. Nae sincerely hoped that her departure would bring Ee-jin back to a smile and happiness. Ee-jin also had an epiphany after reading it. In fact, Nae has never been wrong. The mistake was only that they have been constantly hurting Nae. Ee-jin persuaded her mother to turn back to the right path. But her mother, seeing her daughter's kindness, was greatly provoked and even became mentally confused, mistaking Ee-jin for Nae, and grabbed Ee-jin's neck. After she came to her senses, she sadly held Ee-jin and said she was wrong. But the next second she saw Ee-jin as her sister and had a nervous breakdown. In the end, Ee-jin and Yeeman had to send her to the mental hospital. At this time, Jiho sent someone to search Nae's hometown, but they didn't find anything. Nae came to the countryside and touched her bulging belly. At this moment she was full of expectations for the future, and Yeeman also expressed her blessings to her. In fact, Nae's past life had a deep friendship with Yumin, and Nae even saved her child at a critical moment. So Yumin vowed that even if she died, she would repay Nae's kindness in her next life. As time passed day by day, everyone's lives returned to normal. The Mirai group, under the hard work of Jiho, is getting better and better, and Jiho is not short of new suitors. But every time, he would hold up his wedding ring with Nae and say that he is already married. Chairman Park also found a wife, and asked his wife to come back to him again. During the 2 years of waiting for his wife, he also understood how precious and important his wife was to him. He hoped to spend the rest of his life by his lover's side. When Mrs. Park saw that her unrequited love from childhood had finally been answered, she was so moved that she hugged Chairman Park tightly. Jiho also did not give up looking for Nae, and searched everywhere for Nae whenever he had time. This day, he arrived at a seaside town again, but after searching for a whole day, he got no results and was about to leave. Just then, not far away, Nae happened to be hit by a motorcycle and dropped what she was holding. The green woolen yarn in the bag rolled out. Miraculously, the woolen yarn rolled directly to Jiho's feet. When Jiho picked it up and looked back, he found the person he had longed for was standing right in front of him. When their eyes met, both of them shed tears of longing. Then Nae took Jiho back to her home. Jiho then learned that Nae had already given birth to a son, and he knew at first glance that he was his own flesh and blood, because his eyes, nose and mouth were exactly the same as his own. After these 2 years, everyone had forgotten their wounds. Nae and her grandmother followed Jiho back to Seoul. At that moment, Nae's grandmother placed an embroidered shoe in front of Jiho's parents. Everyone then learned that the original family curse had actually been passed down by Jiho's grandfather. 50 years ago, Jiho's grandfather fell in love with Nae's grandmother at first sight. Jiho's grandfather knew that the two of them had a huge difference in status, and that the elders in the family would never approve of the marriage. In order to marry the lowly Nae, he deliberately spread the rumor of a family curse. In this way, no woman in the extended family would marry Jiho's grandfather, so Jiho's grandfather naturally married Nae's grandmother. But he never imagined that Nae's grandmother had already fallen in love with someone else. So on their wedding day, she drugged Jiho's grandfather, and then secretly ran away with the man she loved, in order to prevent others from finding them. Nai's grandmother even deliberately left one shoe by the cliff. Jiho's grandfather sent someone to find out that on the day Nai's grandmother disappeared, a young man from the same village also disappeared together. He then realized that the woman he loved had already had someone she liked. Nai's grandmother feels very guilty about the curse that is spread through the family. However, Chairman Park comforts her. Although Nai's grandmother and Jiho's grandfather were not destined to be together, Jiho and Nai have come together. This can be considered a blessing from heaven. The next day, Ijin encountered Nai, who had come to visit her mother, while out for a morning jog. By this time, Ijin had long since let go of her resentment towards Nai. Ijin took Nai to see her mother. After 2 years of treatment, Mrs. Min was still in a daze. Nai felt very sad for her. She went up to her and took her hand. When she heard Nai's name, Mrs. Min's eyes filled with tears. She said she had been waiting for Nai for a long time, and that she could finally say sorry to Nai. The kind-hearted Nai immediately forgave Ijin's mother, and the two of them embraced in excitement. Ijin was very happy to see this. A grudge has trapped the three for more than 2 years. Now everyone has come out of the darkness, and Yiman still dotes on Nai like a big brother, knowing that Nai has suffered a lot in the countryside. Without saying a word, he took Nai for a full-body beauty treatment. Soon it was Jiho's turn to pay respects to the ancestors. Nai followed the ants early in the morning to prepare the sacrificial food, while Jiho transformed into a super dad and quietly comforted the children. They also offered sacrifices to Yumin, who had continued the family line. So after 100 years, Yumin also got to eat the offerings for the first time. The Park family shaman saw that Yumin was so happy and asked a question. Why did Nai and Ijin look exactly the same even though they were not related? Yumin told him that out of hatred for Madame Min, she had deliberately made Ijin look like Nai. Once they were the sun and the shadow, but in the future, they will each become two suns with different radiance, and she has also resolved all the grudges of the past century. From now on, she will never appear again. Not long after, Madame Park gave Nai the key to the annex, which meant that she had gained Madame Park's approval, and had become the new mistress of the house. She and Jiho also lived a happy life without shame, and so the story ends.